Dave Kluge, welcome.
Thanks for having me. Always a good time. I was telling my wife about the show this morning, and I was like, man, it's a good way for me to start my day. Matt always comes on with like sirens and cowbells, and it's just mayhem for 2 hours. It's a fun one.
Oh yeah. If she just wants to watch the first minute, because that's really all we can expect from our significant others. Here you go.
There it is.
That's for Dave. That's for Dave's significant other. Now you can go back to your normal life, but you placated your man for 30 seconds, 60 seconds now. That's all you can ask for. That's all. If any of us that do fantasy content can get our girlfriends, wives, boyfriends, whatever, partners to just tune in and check out what we're doing for 60 seconds, that's a major win.
It is. I will say, my wife in college, she majored in communications. And when I first got into this industry, I had aspirations to be a writer and nothing more. I never wanted to do podcasting or video content. But you know how it is. Once you start writing, then people start inviting you on podcasts. And my wife, she would watch every second of every show that I did for the first few months. And she'd give me notes and feedback. And, you got to don't use this term because people aren't going to understand it, and try to project your voice better and improve your posture and all these little things. This whole setup behind me, my wife did all this. I want to be doing this without her. She doesn't watch anymore, but she definitely helped me get started early on.
I'm glad. I was like, I wonder if she doesn't watch anymore. That would be too much.
But you did help a lot when I was getting started, and for that I will forever be thankful.
I have a friend who doesn't play fantasy football, but he likes the show, which is cool. Like, I think that's always a big compliment, right? Mm-hmm. And his family was here staying with us at our house for a couple days. And his son, is in high school and, a little bit aloof. And he's like, the Podfather is live right now down the hall. How are you not there watching him? You should creep in there. And this is a historic moment. You have such an opportunity right now to actually see the Podfather in action live. I can only watch him on my phone. Man, I wish I could be there right now. And he's like, yeah, okay, cool, Dad, thanks. And then he just went on with his life and didn't care, never asked me a single question about what I was doing, and never showed up in my office to ask me anything. So that's it. That's it. All of us parents, we would all like our children, or let's say 99% of us. I'm sure there's a 1%ers out there. Fuck them. Fuck those kids. Those super intellectually curious, hardworking kids. Damn them. But the 99%, the rest of us, we're dealing with kids that are just, most of the time, not that curious about anything.
I will say we had our nieces and nephews staying with us a few weeks ago, and in their mind, they think I'm a YouTuber, and they think it is like the coolest thing in the world. And they all took they took turns sitting in my chair right here, this chair that I'm in right now, and we didn't even have to turn the camera on or anything. Just turning the lights on and telling them that they were on YouTube was enough for them to have, one of those core memories that they're going to remember forever. We put her down in the chair and she doesn't know what to say, so she just says, "Don't forget to like and subscribe." And
that's what they know to say. That's what they know to say. We're supposed to say that. In fact, I have trained my audience to a very moderate degree to try, when they can remember, to remind me, because I'm only going to say that if I'm reminded, because I know I'm supposed to say it, but I'll never think to say it because I don't fucking care. But I know that I'm supposed to say it. So Tyler, our fearless producer, or some member of the audience will say, hey, don't forget to say like and subscribe to the show. That helps get the show to more people. And we want to expand the reach of this program. We want everyone to be smarter about fantasy football and the NFL and sports in general.
Well, the floor is yours, Matt. Let everyone know who's watching this what they should do right now.
We just did that. I think we just did that.
Oh,
I'm not going to do it again. Right. I'm not going to do it again. Like the fucking show. Subscribe to the fucking show.
Housekeeping.
Get the fucking show in other people's hands. Tell people about. Share it on social media. Do it. All right. So I did do that. Again, redundancy is what you need to do. Just a second time. This is what when you have a brand sponsor, they always say, one time's not enough. You always have to go back a second time. Make sure you go back a second time and reinforce where to find the brand, what the link is, what the promo is. Just make them drink the thing that you're selling.
It's a true thing. I do the show with Alfredo Brown, and he does all of our hosting and the housekeeping and the liking and subscribing and reviewing and asking for all that sort of stuff. And on the rare occasion, maybe once every 20 shows or so, I'll follow up Alfredo's ask for the like and subscribe and review, saying, it would mean a lot to us if you guys do this. And it's always that second ask on the shows where I do that. That's when we get flooded with reviews and comments and likes and all that sort of thing. Because, people just tune it out at a certain point. I think when you watch these YouTube shows, people they hear like and subscribe and they just, 1,000-foot stare. They don't hear anything.
But from you, somehow there's an authenticity to it and it actually has impact.
Exactly. So don't forget to like and subscribe if you're watching the show right now on the Player Profiler YouTube. We'd appreciate it. Because
it came from you, just stacking the thumbs up. I know we're stacking thumbs up right now. So you are, a kind of a big deal at this point at Football Guys. You have a lot of different roles. You're into, you do business development. You handle the partners and the sponsors, and you're also a go-to guy for actual analysis. So it's pretty cool to see your growth in the industry. Talk about what you do every week at Football Guys during the season.
Oh my gosh, during the season, it is sun up to sundown, 7 days a week. You know how it is, Matt. I mean, it's a grind. The nice thing is it's kind of repetitive. You know what you're doing on a weekly basis. Like, you can give me any minute of any day and I could tell you exactly what I'm doing. Like 4:25 p.m. on a Wednesday, I'm working on this article. Like, every minute of every day is allotted for, when I do something like this, get to come on with you and move some things up and down and wake up a little bit early, skip a workout, do what I got to do to make it work. But it's a busy time of year for sure. And I know you can empathize with that, but yeah, I think my plan at Football Guys was just to do so much that they can't ever really get rid of me. I do some operation stuff, some business development stuff, some partnership stuff, content, writing, advertising, podcasting. And I'm at the point now that I don't think they can get rid of me. So job well done on my part. I've ingrained myself deep into the Football Guy day-to-day operations.
Is it Henry Hill from Goodfellas? Right, the
Henry
Hill character,
yeah.
Right? He wrote the book that became Goodfellas, right? And he grew up on a street, Irish kid. He grew up on a street with a lot of, made Italian guys, right? And he was walking down the street, and one of these guys came up to him and said, "Hey, kid, why don't you wash my car?" And he goes, "Okay, well, what, sir? That's fine. What are you going to pay me?" And he goes, "That's the wrong question." That's right. Well, what's the right question? He says, you should be asking, what more can I do to make myself irreplaceable and necessary? And then the money will take care of itself. And that's what you've done. Yeah.
And I know we're here to talk football today, but we'll go off on a little tangent here. That's like the first piece of advice I give everybody because, I'm sure you get this question all the time. I get the question all the time. Hey, how do I make it in the fantasy football industry? And my first piece of advice is always, if you want to do it as just a writer or just a podcaster, it's really tough. What you want to do is you want to find out what your other skills are that don't relate to football. Find out how you can use those skills to benefit a company, whether it's video editing or article editing or advertising sales. There's so many other ways that you can kind of get your foot in the door with a company. And then once you've done that, then you can start with the content. But very few people in this industry, very, very few, are doing content only. I mean, almost anybody who is in this industry making content is wearing many other hats. And that's what I tell people. Find your secondary, your tertiary skills and try to find out how those can be valuable to a brand.
I started just doing content, right? I started just turning the mic on, doing a podcast, throwing up a website, and then next thing I know, here's another hat, right? And then another hat, right? And so this is what happened. You got the Roto Underworld hat, then the Player Profiler hat, and then so for me, I just accidentally over time started wearing a whole stack of hats out of necessity to keep the goddamn website going and to keep the podcast going all of a sudden you find out you need to wear a lot of hats. That's if you're starting from scratch. But if the thing is already a up and running machine, then you need to get in there. And like you said, your best path is just to know the whole machine, know how everything works, know where the belts are, where the crankshaft is, know how the steering works, the radio, everything. And then no matter what happens, you want to be the number they call. You want to be always CC'd on emails. So when I was in the corporate world, I took a lot of pride in being a very frequent CC of an email, even if it wasn't directly related to my role. Clearly someone wanted to make sure that I had eyes on it in case I had something to say.
You were important. You were important enough that you needed to be looped in. And that's what you want, is you want to be looped in, even if it isn't something that directly is something you're doing.
Well, that's actually interesting. So there are two different reasons why you might CC someone. You might CC someone just because you want them to know that they're important, because they have power within the organization. So you do that just as a wink and a nod to say, I see you over there, powerful guy. Just know that, I'm keeping you in the loop over here. I would never do anything without you and me linking arms on this, right? We're good, you and me. So there's that. And then there's I could also do a message in a bottle CC to someone else in the organization, maybe tangentially related to my team or not, maybe deeply embedded into my team, just to potentially get their feedback should they choose to grace us with their advice or contribution. So those are the two reasons why you might add a CC to an email.
And either way,
here's the thing with email, though. I grew up with email. I was in high school when email became a thing. So for me, email is like social media to millennials and Gen Z people. So as savvy as like my daughter is with a device, which is amazing to watch her, like you navigate a device, it's like, oh my God, you're like a savant. That's me with email.
Yeah. I mean, we grew up on it, like you said. I mean, I remember having a bunch of different email addresses for different purposes back in the day. And it is weird now. Emails, I try so hard to clean my email up. Like anytime I get an email that I don't want, I try to unsubscribe. I want to keep it as clutter-free as possible. But somehow I'm getting 60, 70 emails a day, and 90% of them are worthless. And it's just kind of what emails become these days.
It still has a lot of utility. There's Slack, there's Discord. I know there's a lot of ways that people communicate internally at an organization. The ability to really lay out something complicated, if you can't meet, email is the way to go. It still has great purpose, and we use it here at if you want to come to the underworld, player profiler, fast draft. I think some people are a little bit surprised by the volume of email that I send and that we all exchange, and because it's 2024, and it's like, yeah, there's some aspects of this business that are a little bit throwback. That's one of them. Speaking of throwback, Dave.
Speaking of,
this is a throwback tune. This takes me back.
Michael Jordan, baby. I grew up on this.
Takes me back. Welcome to the Mind of Mansion program. A football guy's football guy. He does it all. He's going places in this industry that no one has ever gone. One of the most complete skill sets I've ever seen in a fantasy football analyst from Football Guys. Here with me today it is Dave Kluge. Talk to me.
Always appreciate it, man. This is one of my favorite shows to go on. We talked a little bit pre-show. I made the mistake last year before coming on this show of being responsible and healthy and hydrating myself in the morning as one should do. And about halfway through the show, I thought I was going to piss my pants. So didn't make that mistake this time. Had 1 cup of coffee this morning, and I'm ready to go. Whether it's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever you want, Matt. I'm here for it. I'm ready. Let's talk some ball.
Welcome a dehydrated Dave Kluge to the Mind of Mansion program. I'm fired up. I have lots to talk to you about. You're a Bears fan. We're going to talk Bears today, among many other things. The big problem with my fantasy teams right now, because that's what's most important, my fantasy teams.
Of course.
Is this Rashi Rice injury. He's down bad, man. He went down bad, and in an awkward and embarrassing fashion, where I bet Patrick Mahomes woke up in the middle of the night thinking about what happened. It's crazy.
Yeah. There's a lot of speculation going around right now. I mean, I've seen some people saying that because they haven't announced the official ACL tear yet, that this could be good news, that maybe there isn't a tear and that maybe he goes back out there. I've heard that it could be a partial tear, in which case his likelihood of fully rupturing it is, near 100% at some point in the season. I've heard other people say the damage is so bad that they can't even begin to assess it yet. And that's why we have to wait a week to find out what it is, because they need the swelling to go down. Either way, Matt, I know you're a sharp guy, so I'm sure you drafted a lot of Rashi Rice. Rashi Rice was the easiest pick to make in fantasy drafts this year. I have him on almost every single team. I do the Fantasy Pros Expert Consensus Rankings contest. Billy Muzio does it as well, and I know he does a great job. Billy had a good year last year. I had a really good year last year, but so much of that is skewed by being right or wrong on the injured players. And my biggest flag plant that I made in drafts this year was that I had Rashi Rice as a middle second-round pick, where his consensus ranking was in round 5. Looked like a great pick. Thought I was going to have another great year with good accuracy, and then this injury happens, and now it's screwed. Fantasy teams are screwed. Rankings accuracy is screwed. It's just the game we play, unfortunately. Hopefully we get a speedy recovery, but I don't expect to see Rashi Rice back this year.
I was riding high, man. I was riding high on Nabers and Rice. Riding high.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I've shown people the receipts. We've gone to these expert leagues. I mean, I couldn't believe it. I'm in the FSGA expert league, and there's Rashi Rice. And I already have like 4 receivers. And I got to draft him. They're making me draft him. I ended up with Najee Harris in that league because of Rashi Rice. And I'm happy to do it. Happy to do it, because we will figure out the running back position. We'll find a way to figure it out every time. That's our method, right? And it's uncool, man. It's just uncool that happened. And the freak injury about it, the fact that it was Patrick Mahomes who actually caused it, it's just crazy. It sucks.
I know.
And it's interesting how we don't know what the injury is going to be yet, but we know it's very bad because we all have eyes. My opinion, expert opinion, is that there is a lot of swelling there, and they have to wait for the MRI. They have to wait for the swelling to go down, and that's all very bad. It's all bad. I think it's all bad. The only silver lining that I can see is that he is supposed to serve a suspension at some point, and we talked about it being in 2025, not 2024, which is why he was such a great value. Should have been obvious to everybody. No suspension this year. Next year, though. However, he does need to be cleared before he can serve the suspension, which does provide the organization with a little bit of creative flexibility in 2025, depending on how they want to massage this particular situation.
Yeah. Could he be in a wheelchair and the Chiefs are just like, oh, he's good to go. He's healthy. Go ahead and slap that suspension on him now while he's rehabbing? I don't know exactly. I've heard kind of mixed opinions on how they have to do this, but my understanding is that he can't serve the suspension until he's medically cleared to play. So there's a world, I don't want to throw out a doomsday hypothetical here, but let's say this is a multi-ligament knee injury and it's going to take him over a year to recover from it. If he's not medically cleared until midway point of the season, and then he has to serve a half-year suspension on top of that, this doomsday hypothetical that I'm throwing out there, do we not see Rashi Rice until 2026? That is within the range of outcomes here right now.
What does it take to be medically cleared? Is this one of those things where a doctor would violate their Hippocratic oath by clearing a player who's not actually ready to play, and that because they signed paperwork and they have a contract with the league and they have a contract with their medical profession, they're licensed, right? The licensing board Like they don't want to go up in front of the licensing board. Like there's all these reasons why actually you can't just go shopping around for a doctor to clear this guy. It's not that simple. He actually does have to be able to go out there and run around. Mm-hmm. Now, that said, I think it is conceivable that you have a doctor who knows that he may not be ready to deliver the types of explosive plays and to get out of trouble in the middle of the field that you would necessarily want
medically
to clear him at a 100% level. But how often, the thing is, how often do these doctors clear players they know are not 100%, but are good enough to go that they can give it a go, right? So if you're going to do that, right, if you're going to clear these guys who were concussed the previous week, if you're going to clear these guys with high ankle sprains that you know are another 5 weeks away from being pain-free, well, then that same guy, you got to think that same doctor is going to put his name down and say, Rashi Rice is good to go, wink, wink.
Right. And that's definitely possible. And I think, there's still so many moving parts here. Like I want to speculate on this and give actionable advice, but I feel like it's impossible to give anything actionable at this point because we're just looking at a half-completed puzzle. Like we don't know what the injury was, what his timetable for return is, what the suspension next year is going to look like. And I've been racking my brain, man. Like I've been thinking about this a lot as somebody who drafted a ton of Rashi Rice, somebody who has a lot of Rashi Rice in Dynasty, somebody who wants to acquire more Rashi Rice in Dynasty if this opens up buy window. But there's just so many moving parts that I don't necessarily know what to do. I mean, if you can go buy low now and somehow he does avoid an ACL injury, that's just a gift from God. If you can go buy a Rashi Rice share for a second-round pick and he comes back. But also, I mean, you could potentially pay a first-round pick for Rashi Rice and not get anything for the next 2 years. It's I think this is one of those situations where unless you're getting a screaming low price, I'm talking a second-round rookie pick or cheaper, I think that you just kind of wait for more information to come out at this point. And I don't think anybody's panicking and selling for that low.
Slow down on the hopium, okay?
Yeah.
He's got a torn ACL at the very least. Okay, that's not going to happen. You're not going to have some Hail Mary offer that gets accepted and then he's actually playing this year. Of course, it's possible. We don't have the actual definitive statement from the team yet. Okay, but from what we've seen and common sense would tell us, he's out for the year. He's now a buy low. The buy low window is open. You should go buy him in Dynasty. He is very young and ACL injuries heal. There's a lot of players that are playing at a very high level right now in the NFL that had ACL tears, including Tom Brady. How many championships did Tom Brady win post-ACL tear? So I love going out and getting Rashi Rice right now in Dynasty especially. And my prediction is that he comes back week 9 next year, and it's just a combination of rehabilitation / suspension. That's when he's back. Even if he is legitimately cleared and he could play, at the beginning of next year, he wouldn't be at 100% anyway. We know that these players that return from ACL tears, they're not themselves until the second half of the following year anyway. So just wash your hands, put him off to the side, and then come back to this kid in 13 months, put him in your lineup, and let's go.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. I mean, if you're getting the suspension, if anything, could help him. You know, we're not going to have to worry about that slow ramp-up phase for his first month back or so.
The pulled hamstring. Remember the August hamstring injury? That's always recovering from an ACL tear, pushing your body too much. Oh, there's the hamstring injury on August 14th. Get to avoid that, right?
So, I mean, if you knew, let's say even throw out another, worst case type of scenario. If you knew Rashi Rice was coming back in 2025, in week 13, if you knew that you were just getting Rashi Rice for the fantasy playoffs and nothing more, I think that alone makes him worth a first-round pick. Like, I would pay a first-round pick just for Rashi Rice during the fantasy championship next year, or the fantasy playoffs next year.
It depends. The problem is in actual league, you're talking about a win now team that's going to give up a late first, right? And a win now team is probably focused on winning the championship this year, and they're not focused on next year. Now, if you are so confident that you can trade for Rashi Rice now and still win, I mean, congratulations. Your team is amazing. You're a juggernaut. Great. The problem is the people that would want Rashi Rice in a rebuilding situation also are sitting on a top 5 pick.
Right.
Trading a top 5 rookie pick for an injured wide receiver who isn't supposed to be back for over a year is not a good idea. So this is where it gets very interesting, and you can get creative where just shopping first-round picks around is not going to be enough. You need to have some sort of creative structure to the deal to get it done. I recommend getting creative. Absolutely. But if I'm a win now team, I'm not acquiring Rashi Rice. That's not what I'm doing. If I think I'm going to win the championship this year, my disposition is always all in, all gas. Let's go win. I've had so many championships, stolen from me in the final week, and I have to always think back what I could have done to strengthen the team before the trade deadline, and I didn't do it. I rested on what I thought was a championship roster. Didn't want to give up any part of my future instead of just going out and winning the goddamn league.
Yeah, so your advice would be to go spend that second round pick on a Derrick Henry maybe instead of a Rashi Rice if you're contending.
Oh yeah,
a guy who
is
pretty darn good in this offense.
Oh yeah, right. Would you consider the Derrick Henry performance from Week 4 the most interesting event that happened, or is there another event that you found even more interesting than 200 yards from Derrick Henry in a super divisional grudge match or a conference grudge match?
Conference, yeah, and that's one where I think we all expected that Derrick Henry was going to be a little bit game script dependent. I think what we didn't expect was that the Baltimore Ravens would be, the ones forcing the game scripts, going up against the Buffalo Bills. That was crazy to see. That was definitely one of the most interesting performances. I think the most interesting, maybe I'm getting a little too deep here, but Matt, I know you've got some hardcore audience members and people might like this. I'm interested by Jordan Whittington. I think he had one of the most interesting performances. And if you look just in the stat sheet, there isn't a ton there. But man, led the team in snaps, routes, targets, receptions. I look at the other guys there, Tutu Atwell and Demarcus Robinson, just guys, no disrespect meant to any of those guys, but they are receivers. I think McVay is at this point where he said, I want to see what we have in Jordan Whittington, because we saw in Week 3 with no Cooper Kupp, Jordan Whittington was still in a very small role, but he looked good in that role. Beat Javarius Ward when he was in press coverage. They manufactured some screens to get him the ball in his hand, and then he becomes a full-time player, and he sees a 28% target share. I think the comps to Puka Nacua are almost too easy. The big athletic guy who loves contact and loves to block and is best running across the middle of the field, late round pick, rookie. But I think there's something to it. I mean, this guy, I don't think he's going to be Puka Nacua. That was catching lightning in a bottle, but I think they're going to use him in that role, and I think he's going to continue to be the wide receiver 1 for Matthew Stafford, which we've seen over the last decade is a very valuable role. Might only be for a few more weeks, but I think the Jordan Whittington, I'm kind of happy that he didn't have a huge blow-up week because he's still available in waivers, and I could still pick him up in even more leagues, but I think he's going to be the guy in Los Angeles going forward for this next month or so.
How many fingers was I holding up?
8, which is the number of targets that he pulled on Sunday, correct?
Yep, that was very important, very important, very important. Now, I read a bunch of waiver wire pieces as I was setting up my fab bids, and there was not enough hype around Jordan Whittington. So on Patreon, patreon.com/podfather, I put out what my actual fab bids are, and people will disagree. You should be bidding more on Dontavian Wicks, and I'm just not that guy. You can go somewhere else to get super hyped about a wide receiver that you're never going to know when to start. That's fine. Please, by all means, bid whatever you want on. But my advice is to, bid, at most 10% on any given wide receiver, any given week on waivers. Now, running backs, that's where I spend all my money.
Right.
The top 3 guys this week, Wicks, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Jordan Whittington. Now, I like Wan'Dale Robinson this week because if Nabers misses the game, he's a guy I can actually start with confidence. 8 targets would be his bare minimum. He's probably more likely to get 16 targets than he is to get 8 if there's no Malik Nabers. Malik Nabers hopes to play. Malik Nabers is in good spirits. Okay, so last time I heard a teammate, in this case, Darius Slayton, talk about how his brother-in-arms is in good spirits. How is that positive news? How is that a signal that, he's going to play this week? Because this is the lazy reporting you get. There's positive news coming out about Malik Nabers. He's in good spirits. What? Anytime you hear someone is in good spirits, it's bad.
Yeah. I kind of agree with you, but also a concussion on a Thursday, the data tells us that those players almost never miss the next game. I think, and it's still early in the week, it's Tuesday, but if he's able to log a limited practice tomorrow, then he's probably on pace to play. I don't think I'm bracing for no Malik Nabers in week 5. Just with the fact that the injury came on a Thursday, I'd expect to see him out there. But I think Wan'Dale Robinson still has value even with Nabers. Like Devin Singletary.
It's a good pickup. It's a good pickup.
Yeah.
And the thing about fab bids is, do I think Jordan Whittington is a little more exciting? Absolutely. But you don't need to bid more, right? Wan'Dale Robinson had a big game, and there is an injury to Malik Nabers, which is going to create more interest in the bidding. So this is also game theory plus actual player and situational analysis. You have to bid a tick more to get Wan'Dale Robinson this week, but I want both. And either way, my plan of attack was set up so that I would most likely get maximum Whittington at value. That's how I set my fab bidding up this week. And then another player I'm probably going to also be acquiring in addition to Whittington or instead of, especially in deeper leagues, is Bo Melton.
Oh, yeah. I'm a big Bo Melton guy. It kind of became a bit this offseason where I wouldn't shut up about Bo Melton. And I was just saying, like, you're getting similar outs to Dontavian Wicks, but you're getting him for way cheaper. People are paying for Dontavian Wicks at the 12th round price tag, and you can get Bo Melton for an 18th rounder. I don't have the numbers in front of me right now, but I remember looking at his per route metrics from last year, and they were mind-blowing. It's like Devontae Adams, Puka Nacua, Bo Melton. And then you look at yards per route run, and it's like Tyreek Hill and then Bo Melton. And I mean, the issue was that he wasn't on the field all that much last year, but when he was and when he was running routes, he looked fantastic.
He's a much better player than Romeo Doubs. That's all I need to know. I don't need to have better any receiver. Other I will push great insight into this situation. That's all you need to know, right?
Yeah. I think the thing with Romeo Doubs that gets lost in translation. Romeo Doubs analytically is not a good receiver, but he's a good football player. And there's a difference. Those are two very different discussions. And I think because Romeo Doubs gets out there and blocks, and he'll make the chips on guys across the middle of the field to open up other players, and he knows where the first down marker is, and he can pick up yards after the catch. None of that stuff is flashy in his analytical profile, but I think that he's going to stay a full-time player just because of the things that he does. He kind of helps that offense get moving a little bit. I know there's no way to like back that up with numbers, but when you watch it play, like he is a pretty integral part of what that offense does. The way he gets involved in the run game is what keeps him on the field during the passing game. They don't want to constantly be, rotating personnel after every single play. So I think that's kind of the issue with Romeo Doubs, is that he might not be the best receiver, but he is a pretty good football player.
I think that you believe that he is a pretty good football player and a mediocre receiver.
Yes.
I think that he is a mediocre football player and an awful receiver. Okay, because when I think of a good football player who's not necessarily like an elite receiver, I think of Juwan Jennings.
Hmm?
At least put me in a situation where I can bank a bunch of fantasy points if everybody else on the team falls down around that guy. I don't trust Romeo Doubs. I trusted Juwan Jennings to start him a couple weeks ago. Yay! Starting him last week? No. Because he's not better than Debo and he's not better than Ayuk. We're going to find out how good Ayuk is. Ayuk is one of my favorite starts, one of my favorite plays in DFS this week, one of my favorite plays just in fantasy this week in general. One of my favorite pieces of advice is, please, for the love of God, do not bench Brandon Ayuk. Just like all those people that were benching Christian Kirk after 2 weeks. It's like the variance of the wide receiver position is something you can set your watch by. So just please don't get tricked into thinking, oh, well, this guy, he's so rusty and he's probably going to have a lost season. Is that what you think? Or the rust got knocked off. He had a game with that didn't flow his direction, because that's what has to happen for a wide receiver. The game flow, the game script, the game plan has to bend in your direction for you to be successful. Some weeks it doesn't, right? Think about if you're a Ravens wide receiver last week. What were the odds you were going to succeed? What were the odds you were going to be fantasy relevant? 0. Okay? So that can happen. Brandon Ayuk just got back. Go back to him. He was a second-round pick in best ball until all of this contract controversy, drama, whatever you want to call it, pushed him down in the 4th round. Because he's also an efficient, talented, actual receiver and a good football player. So just, you agree? Please don't isn't that the ultimate overreaction would be to bench Brandon Ayuk this week?
Yeah, I don't think I'm benching him yet, but I'd say my panic meter is starting to quietly beep. Really? Enough that I can shut it out and ignore it. I mean, this is Brandon Ayuk. We remember in 2021, he just ended up in Kyle Shanahan's doghouse, and it kind of seems like maybe that's happening again. I mean, in that big Juwan Jennings blow-up game, Juwan Jennings was running the Brandon Ayuk routes. He was the one running those deep crossers across the middle of the field where Brock Purdy's hitting him in space where he could make plays after the catch. That was Brandon Ayuk's bread and butter last year, where we saw Ayuk start running a few more of those last week, which is a promising sign. But the first 3 weeks of the season, Ayuk wasn't getting those looks. He was playing near the line of scrimmage. They weren't targeting him all that much. So my fear here has nothing to do with Brandon Ayuk and everything to do with Kyle Shanahan. I just think Kyle Shanahan can be a little bit petty at times. And, I think that, hopefully this doesn't bleed over into the entire season. The fact of the matter is the 49ers aren't winning, so they need to change something up. And I think that bodes well for getting Brandon Ayuk back in the role that he plays best. But those first few weeks, it wasn't a Brandon Ayuk issue. It was a Kyle Shanahan issue. They were using Brandon Ayuk on these rinky-dink routes that don't, give you a lot of fantasy points. And now they're starting to get him back into his big boy role where he's running 20 yards across the middle of the field, making plays after the catch.
I love words that get used that you just never hear.
Like rinky-dink?
Yes. Yes. Thank you. I love that. That's the first time. We've had a rinky-dink on the show. We may never get one again, but I appreciated it very much. I loved it. The Jets are also struggling to win games.
Mm-hmm.
You're worried about Ayuk. Are you more worried about Ayuk or Garrett Wilson?
So, we've got to have the discussion because they're both I'm not super worried about either. On a scale of 1 to 10, they're at a 2 and a 3 for me. And Ayuk is at a 2 out of 10, far from panicking, but
good.
I'd say Garrett Wilson is at a 3.
Good. Okay, yeah, we're in the same, but also it's ADP adjusted worry meter.
Right. Yeah. If I drafted Garrett Wilson, after Brandon Ayuk, I wouldn't be as concerned, but yeah, we were paying up. We were drafting Garrett Wilson ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. and ahead of Saquon Barkley and Derrick Henry and a lot of guys who we aren't worried about at all right now. And again, this worry doesn't have the same way that my Brandon Ayuk worry has to do with Kyle Shanahan. My Garrett Wilson worry has to do with Aaron Rodgers. It has nothing to do with Garrett Wilson, but this is also a guy who, like Kyle Shanahan, isn't afraid to kind of I don't know if punish is the right word, but maybe it's the right word. Like you saw right after Garrett Wilson's fumble, Garrett Wilson didn't get targeted for the next 2 quarters. Everything was going to Allen Lazard and Mike Williams and the running backs. And I feel like that's just something that we've seen. Aaron Rodgers has that penchant throughout his entire career. Like, if you make a mistake, sorry, buddy, you're not getting the ball for the rest of the game. And Garrett Wilson has made some mistakes. He gave up on a route. He had a drop. He had a fumble. Like, he has made some mistakes through these first few games. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is just going to say, okay, if you're going to make those mistakes, I'm going to other people. And that's what we've seen through the first month of the season.
The only thing that Aaron Rodgers has in common with Tom Brady is they're both weirdos.
They are.
Right? So they're both weird, but they're very weird. But, they're weird like famous people get weird. Most famous people get weird. Like sycophants will make you weird. So, but they're the diametrically opposed weirdos. There's nothing similar about these guys. Tom Brady would go up to that guy, put his arm around him, and throw him a pass the very next play.
It's confidence
just they are so polar opposite, but also weird. My take this summer was that, yes, Garrett Wilson, he is certainly going to have a career high in fantasy points per game this year. No doubt about it. Love the talent, love the situation. But I don't think his talent or situation is better than the talent and situation that Malik Nabers has. So what's the big difference? Right? Why aren't we having that conversation? So now we have to have that conversation because he's been so much better than most of the receivers drafted in the first round, which begs the question, where would Malik Nabers get drafted if we redrafted today? And he's healthy and he's playing, and the concussion, he comes back. Like we talked about, the spirits that he's in are so good and so great. And he's had so much time to recover from this concussion, and it wasn't that bad, and it looked much worse than it is, and he's going to be okay. Assuming all that's true. And I think it is. I think you're right. Like, I'm very paranoid because this is all I have left. Him and Aaron Jones. That's all we have.
Yeah.
Please, God. Where would Malik Nabers go?
So are we talking Dynasty or are we talking redraft?
Well, you posed the question. Let's go both.
I think single quarterback Dynasty, he'd be the 101. I don't think that's crazy. I mean, based on what we've seen through the first month of the season, like, we knew there were some character concerns and whatnot, but
character concerns.
Yeah, there
you mean like George Pickens' character concerns, like he's too intense?
Yeah, like too intense.
He's too much of a dick. He wants the ball too much. He wants to win too much. Like that kind of character concern.
That type. I don't want to use
like he pumps himself up in the mirror with a ski mask.
That type. Yeah. Those were the concerns about Malik Nabers, and like
I like those players, by the way.
I do too.
Players that are shy and sit in the corner and look down at their phones during meetings. I don't like those guys.
Yeah, you want the guys who are saying, "Give me the ball because I'm the best player on the field." Like that's you kind of need that if you want to be. I mean, for every, it's kind of like the Larry Fitzgerald and the Terrell Owens, and like Larry Fitzgerald, people are going to remember him, but he was an outlier. There aren't a lot of wide receivers that are just going to put their head down, go to work, never cause any drama. There aren't a lot of Larry Fitzgeralds in the leagues, but there are a lot of wide receivers that kind of fit the Malik Nabers mold. So I like it too. 101 in single quarterback. And I think even in super flex leagues, obviously I prefer him ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. It would be Jaden Daniels and Caleb Williams would be the only guys I'm taking ahead of him in super flex. So he'd be my 103 in super flex. But you start talking redraft, then it's a
hold on.
Different question.
You're talking about a rookie draft.
Yeah, I was talking about in a rookie.
Okay,
draft.
A rookie draft. Phew. Okay.
Yeah. Rookie.
Okay, wow.
Draft, yeah.
Okay. All right. Good.
But talking about redraft, I mean, we just did a rest of season wide receiver rankings episode last week where we talked about our rest of season wide receiver tiers and rankings, and I had Malik Nabers as my wide receiver 3, and for the rest of the season, and the only guys ahead of him were Rashi Rice and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So I mean, are you at the point where if you're redrafting today, Malik Nabers is a top 5 pick? I mean, I don't know if I could list 4 guys that I'm taking ahead of him. Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry, maybe Amon-Ra St. Brown, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb are all kind of clustered in there together, but I don't have a super strong stance saying that you need to take CeeDee Lamb or Justin Jefferson or Amon-Ra St. Brown ahead of Malik Nabers. I think if you're redrafting today, you could make a strong argument that Malik Nabers deserves to be the 3rd player off the board.
What about you? Wouldn't take Kenneth Walker there?
No, I love Kenneth Walker, but he's got a Zach Charbonnet problem. Zach Charbonnet, man.
I can't believe it. I can't believe it. I said that you could quote me. Someone's got to pull the quote. I said, whatever Charbonnet would get, add at least 5 points for Kenneth Walker. And I broke down exactly how Kenneth Walker, on a play-by-play basis, would incrementally add fantasy points. Mm-hmm. And when he had a similar role, right, to Charbonnet the previous week, Charbonnet puts up 25, Walker puts up 33. It was perfect. I was like, this guy's making me look so good.
But yeah, I think the problem, like Walker, talent-wise, is unbelievable. I mean, like the 2 of the plays that he had yesterday, that Spider-Man front flip for the first down, I've never seen that on a football field in my life. I have watched thousands of hours of football. I've never seen anybody do that. And then the touchdown run that he had too, where he just outran the entire Detroit Lions defense. I mean, he brings an element to the game that not many other running backs bring to the game, but we saw it at the end of the second quarter. We saw it late in the fourth quarter when they get in their hurry up offense. It's Zach Charbonnet. And that sucks. You know, talent-wise, I think Kenneth Walker is probably a top 5 talent in the NFL, but this is a game of numbers, and we have to look at where the opportunities are going. And Zach Charbonnet, you know, it's not going to be a huge role, but he takes enough of the passing down work that it is just an inconvenient ceiling that it puts on what Kenneth Walker can do.
Not as inconvenient as Bucky Irving is for Rachaad White, though.
Yeah. And I know you're a Rachaad White guy. I remember we had a long talk about Rachaad White last year. I think this is another similar situation though, where, you know, we kind of know who is going to be getting what looks, and Rachaad White is not going to give up the passing down work. It's just not going to happen. He's good in pass protection. He's good at catching the ball. The way they use him as kind of an extension of the run game, the connection he's got with Baker Mayfield, that's not going anywhere. But Bucky Irving is clearly the better rusher. I mean, like, you don't need to be a scout. Like I could show my mom Bucky Irving running the ball and Rachaad White running the ball, and she'd say, why is that Rachaad White guy still getting any touches? Like, Bucky Irving is clearly the better running back. I haven't looked since this week, but I saw last year Rachaad White was dead last in rushing EPA. And going into week 4, he was towards the bottom of the list as well. He's just not good at rushing the ball, but he's so good at catching passes that I don't think his role just disappears. Talked this morning, we did a rest of season running back rankings episode, and I was standing on an island. I was recording the show with Alfredo Brown and Jagger May, and I said, I'm still trying to buy Rachaad White. And I think it's because everybody has just assumed that Rachaad White is done for, that Bucky Irving is going to take his role from him. I think Rachaad White is still, I don't see a scenario where he even falls to being the running back 1B, let alone the RB2. He's still going to be plenty involved. Irving might take some of the low-calorie touches between the 20s, and I think that is totally fine. That's not why you drafted Rachaad White. You drafted him for touchdowns and targets, and I think he's still going to get those.
We booked these guests so far in advance. There's just no way I could have known, right, that I would have like a partner in crime that I could just call. I could put the bat signal out, and Dave arrives to support my whole thesis about Rachaad White. Thank you, Dave. This is not like I didn't know, like, oh, you workshopped your Rachaad White position and you found the guest that would support it the best. No, this is just pure luck. This happened. I luck box most shows. That's one thing we can all agree on, right? I luck box most of these shows, right? And we have someone in the chat, the Pod Son, with a great comment. I'll put it up again. The king of weird himself, the Podfather, saying someone else is weird is rich.
I think you
Now,
just
he
have
said
authority
priceless.
on
He said
calling out
priceless, but I
weirdness.
changed it to rich because rich sounded better. That's because I'm really good at turns of phrase. Pod son, not as much. That's why he's the son and I'm the father.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been the biggest Rashad White guy, and it's just one of those things when the
Now you
market
are.
changes.
What you just
Yeah,
said was so
yeah.
mild, and it was so reasoned and even, and yet it's translated into you're a raging Rashad White fan at this point because he's been so crushed. His brand has been destroyed. It's been an aluminum can that has just been stepped on and then run over by 70 cars. And then
And
put
that's what we were
into
talking about.
a garbage can and then put into a landfill. And then that's Rashad White at this point.
And that's on today's show. We were talking about, potentially trading away like a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4 on your roster for Rashad White. Like that's how low his value is now. And that's crazy to me. Like I didn't want Rashad White at his 4th round price tag in drafts, but if you're telling me now I can trade my wide receiver 4 and get Rashad White, I'm trying to. I mean, this is yeah. I mean the you're still starting Rashad White. Like he's still at minimum an RB2, and then God forbid something happens to Bucky Irving, he goes right back to being the top 5 guy that he was last year. So you still got the contingent upside as well. There's just it's if this is what we're doing with Rashad White, pushing him down outside of the top 80 in player values, I want me some Rashad White.
You know that most people at this point would prefer Zach Charbonnet.
Get out of here. I mean, I believe it. It's just no, I wouldn't. I mean, I believe most people would.
Imagine what Zach Charbonnet brings, but Rashad White better in every way, and the incumbent is established in Seattle in a way the incumbent is not yet established in Tampa, and the incumbent in Seattle is one of the meanest motherfuckers to don an NFL uniform and play the running back position, and the incumbent. Or you would think he's the incumbent at this point, Bucky Irving. His name's Bucky, okay? And he went to Oregon, cool. Right? Yeah. There's one thing I know about Bucky Irving. The one thing I knew in my bones was that he was an overrated receiver because of all the receptions and the checkdowns he caught from Bo Nix last year. That I knew in my bones. What I didn't know, and what I will happily admit to being wrong about, I had no idea Bucky Irving was this good between the tackles. Mm-hmm. If you are in this audience and you knew he would be this good between the tackles, by all means, raise your hand in the chat and we will acknowledge you and your absolute utter genius, because that's just not something I saw, and I didn't talk to anyone that was making that particular case. So that's when I feel better about being on the wrong side of a player projection, is when the thing that takes that player down was mentioned by nobody.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people expected him to be the pass catching guy, and they saw the overlapping skill sets. But like you said, that was just a product of the Oregon offense. That's not something that he is going to do. And I don't think there's anything wrong when you have a pass catching guy like Rashad White to have a guy that can spell some of the between the tackle touches that are taking a toll on the body and increasing the risk of injury and things like that. Just keep his legs fresh for the pass game, because that's what we want to see for Rashad White. But I'm looking right now on rest of season rankings at Fantasy Pros. I made sure to look only at people that have updated since this week has ended, and Rashad White is 83rd overall. Just 4 spots ahead of Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is closing in on the gap, about to pass Rashad White in rest of season rankings, and he's lumped in, Jerome Ford.
This is full PPR, by the way.
Yeah. And this is like you're telling me right now I could flip Christian Kirk for Rashad White? I'm not thinking twice about that.
Aiden Tobin is in the chat, and he has a hero build with Rashad White, and it looks fantastic because his RB2 could be Brian Robinson, because his receivers are probably Malik Nabers and Amon-Ra St. Brown, etc. So he's still feeling great. Not sorry, everybody. Not sorry. A lot of the receivers you could have been drafting around that Rachaad White zone. The reason I don't have many Rachaad White hero builds this year, unfortunately, I mean, this is a lot of theory because I personally don't have a lot of Rachaad White, but I support those like Aiden who do. Deontay Johnson, Terry McLaurin, George Pickens. These are difference-making receivers. Chris Godwin, right? Mm-hmm. These are lock button receivers. They're all lock buttons last week. Easy lock buttons. And then boom, 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 there it is. George Pickens, he didn't get the touchdown. But, I mean, have you seen a better process play than George Pickens last week? I mean, Terry McLaurin, what more do you want? I couldn't believe that a week after Jahan Dotson gets traded, his ADP had barely moved. Weird. Call me weird. That's weird.
I mean, I kind of get it. Jahan Dotson isn't doing much of anything. He's just going out there and sprinting down the sidelines and not drawing targets. So
but that was the only reason
I get it. I get what you're saying, but Jahan Dotson was always a trap. And I didn't change my rankings much when Jahan Dotson left Washington, but I did expect the ADP to move and was just like you, shocked that it did not. It just is a testament to how sharp drafters and analysts are these days that they didn't move the needle with Jahan Dotson. But
it should have at least allowed people an opportunity. What I'm saying, Dave, this was your opportunity to reassess Terry McLaurin and be like, oh, wait a second. Where are we at with Terry McLaurin again? Oh, shit. We got him too low.
Well, it all looks so clear in hindsight. And now with the benefit of hindsight, we say Jaden Daniels is a great quarterback and he can hit any player at every level of the field with pinpoint accuracy. We didn't know that before week one.
That is fair. So that is fair. Just because we called it doesn't mean we knew it. That's a very important statement.
Right. So
that is very important.
With the benefit of hindsight, now we're saying, why the hell wasn't Terry McLaurin a second-round pick? Well, because we didn't know Jaden Daniels was going to have the best start to his career that any rookie quarterback has ever had. But now we do know it, and I think we need to move Terry McLaurin up quite a bit in our rest of season rankings.
Quite a bit. Great trade target. Still, that's a buy high target. I love buy highs. Pickens a buy high. McLaurin a buy high.
I talked about
Malik Nabers still a buy high.
Week one. I'll still buy high on Malik Nabers. I'll flip. I don't think there's a receiver out there that I won't trade away if it means I can get Malik Nabers.
Beast. These guys are wired the right way, man. Well, I actually don't know how Deontay Johnson is wired. I haven't heard anything about what he's like off the field, but I do know that he is incredible at getting target separation, and that really matters, especially when your quarterback is Andy Dalton. Again, this was lucky, right? We've had some bad luck with Rashi Rice, we've had some good luck, and then it'll balance out. We'll make the playoffs, win championships. Be great. How does Kirk Cousins look to you?
Like the same Kirk Cousins he's always looked like. Maybe a hair above league average. I think so many things. I heard that his Achilles isn't 100%, and I saw there's always that one play that somebody zooms in on and slows down and zooms into his pixelated plant foot and says, "See, he's not 100% healthy." But if you watch all the other snaps, he's still been able to plant. He's been able to throw, but it's Kirk Cousins. We know what he is. He's slightly above league average. He's not a difference maker by any means. I just think that now that we are finally seeing above league average quarterback play in Atlanta, something we haven't seen in a long time, I think the question starts to be about Drake London and Kyle Pitts more than it is about Kirk Cousins. And that's a tough pill to swallow because those are people that we've liked for years. And we always said quarterback is the problem here. Well, now they have a quarterback, and Darnell Mooney is running laps around Drake London and Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts,
Kirk Cousins, Kyle Pitts, man.
Kyle Pitts.
It's bad.
I saw some real flag planting around Kyle Pitts. I like the upside. I was a Dalton Kincaid guy. If you're going to go early tight end,
everyone was wrong.
Right. It's fine. Right.
No matter who you
larger point is you don't draft tight ends early. This is the worst year to draft tight ends early. So that was correct. And if you are in tight end premium, and if you are so inclined in the 5th round, then the guy has to be Dalton Kincaid. That's not looking great. Some people were way out over their skis on Kyle Pitts. And woof. That's a tough one. That's a tough pill to swallow. And now it's looking a little bit like there's a B. Robinson in the NFC who is winning people leagues, but his name is not Bijan. So we have the battle of the B. Robinsons now. And the fact that Bijan Robinson is in this situation, he has to be very sad about this.
Tyler Algier is a good football player, and I think fantasy managers just refuse to admit it. He's a good football player.
Well, a lot of fantasy managers don't seem to know this because I looked it up. He's only 23% rostered in fantasy football. Now, most of those are leagues that we're in and that most of the audience is in, but that's still a stark number. It's too low. It's crazy low. So for me, my debate this week is if I'm making my fab bids, it's not a lock, right? It's just like we talked about, picking up Dontavian Wicks versus Josh Downs versus Wan'Dale Robinson. Okay, Wicks is the lock. But then after that, it becomes an interesting debate. And I sort of settled in on the guy that's probably the best to target and make sure you're game theorying it so you get as much as him as possible is Jordan Whittington. And I felt the same way about the running back where it's like, okay, Kareem Hunt, sure, I get it. But I think there should have been a debate. Instead of just running out to Kareem Hunt, there should be a debate. Hey, wouldn't you maybe rather have Tyler Algier? Doesn't Tyler Algier have more upside? Doesn't Tyler Algier have more league-winning potential?
I'm going Hunt over Algier.
Oh, I am. I ended up going, just so everybody knows. In fact, I guess no one has to subscribe on patreon.com/podfather because I did say 20% Hunt, 15% Algier, but it was a debate. And again, when I'm reading the content, I'm not getting that. I'm getting more slam dunk, and my view is, and this happens to me every week. Every week I'm looking up, it's like, oh, this player slam dunk, easy. And I'm like, well, like with Roshan. I was like, I think I want to make sure I get Roshan this week. That was weeks prior, but I'm just saying, every week there's a guy like a Roshan, like an Algier, like a Whittington, a Bo Melton, where I'm like, I think that's maybe the guy I want. Sorry.
I haven't even thought about Algier as a waiver wire pickup. But
he's available everywhere. That's not like super competitive expert league.
And I haven't seen Algier available in a single league that I'm in, so I didn't even think twice
we don't think about it. I know, we don't think
there,
about it.
Right.
But when you do the research, you're like, oh, because we have to provide content for everybody, right? We are big enough. I mean, you have football guys, man. You got a lot of fans, a lot of subscribers in a wide range of leagues, and we do it Player Profiler too. So yes, of course, I'm going to talk about Justice Hill. Of course, I like Antonio Gibson because I'm getting out ahead of this Drake May era. I'm trying to think about, when am I stashing Jalen Polk? Like, these are conversations that we have for this set of our audience, for these hardcore gamers, but then we have these others that are in a league or two, and they look up and they're wondering how much to bid on Tyler Algier. We got to be here for all of these people. It's all of society without discrimination, Dave.
Yeah, I get it. Yeah, I mean, I think... Yeah, like you, I would prefer Kareem Hunt to Tyler Algier, but yeah, it blows my mind that Tyler Algier is available in any leagues. Like, this is a guy who has already shown standalone. He's already shown standalone value, and we know.
I think he had he has a week or two where he's clearly relegated, not putting up fantasy points, and people are just moving on. Okay, it's Bijan show. Okay, it's fine. Not so fast. Bijan also has a hamstring injury, so that's also to be factored in. right? He's going to manage it. He's fine. But I'm a notch more skeptical about injuries than the average fantasy analyst. So that's just
Same.
It's baked into how I look at these situations. So can you imagine going back and drafting Alvin Kamara, Kenneth Walker, Aaron Jones, Brian Robinson? I mean, the running back nuts were in the dead zone this year.
Yeah, and I don't want to pat myself on the back too hard, but I refer to this as the running back shred zone. This
Yes.
offseason. That's what I was calling it. I mean, it was just.
How did I not think of that?
Yeah, and everybody's been calling it the dead zone, and David Montgomery also came from that same area, looking pretty darn good. Tony Pollard looking pretty good as well. And
see, Pod Son, that would have been helpful. If you would have put that in the chat 3 months ago, that would have been really helpful, Pod Son. Do better. Put that in if you put that in the chat on July 1, I would have felt so good. I would have credited him. But no. It's
now you got to credit.
We have to mock the Podfather and propose turns of phrases that are worse than he would come up with on his own. Thanks for nothing.
I just think that we overreacted too much. Like, I know you did some studies on the running back dead zone. JJ Zacharyson did some studies on the running back dead zone. And I think 5, 6, 7 years ago, it was great. And it was so good that it got out to the masses, and everybody started pushing running backs so far down draft boards that these guys all became great values. And I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was just so easy to just wait to take your RB1 until round 5, 6, 7, whatever, and you could walk out with 3 or 4 running backs from this range, and you could potentially have 2 top 5 running backs right now.
All guys that were going in the first round in previous years.
Exactly, yeah. And now
that's the whole thing. It's not even like, oh, wow. Right, yeah, of course. Brian Robinson, I mean, he's really going places that no one thought he could go. Congratulations, right? If you were super Mr. Brian Robinson guy. Hey, I thought Brian Robinson was better than Bijan Robinson. Okay, raise your hand if you're that guy. Unlikely.
No, you're lying. Yeah.
Right? Liars. All of you. But other guys, I'm just like, well, he was a first rounder, right? Remember, like, Derrick Henry and Saquon were first rounders. Now, Saquon was ultimately, especially in high stakes leagues, FFPC, late first round this year. But best ball, early second rounder. Derrick Henry was not being drafted in the first round in any league. Maybe 14-teamer, half PPR, then maybe. I mean, if we redrafted today, who would go first, Derrick Henry or Saquon?
Saquon, I think. Even, down week 4, but they had no A.J. Brown, no Devonta Smith. I mean, that's just, you're not going to see that every week. We've seen what Saquon Barkley looks like in this offense, and the offense is at full health, and it's, 101 type material. Like, he is crushing it in this offense. Yeah.
So imagine if you had Christian McCaffrey's skill set, but you actually had a better injury track record. You had a lower injury rating on the Injury Finder app available in the App Store, for example, and you were 25 pounds heavier, and you were more explosive.
And I believe he's younger.
Let's not talk about that. Let's not talk. One guy was early first, one guy early second round. Never mind.
Yeah.
Never mind all that. Never mind. There's also the unfortunate conversation we have to have about a Breece Hall. So the first round running backs this year were a cataclysm.
Yeah.
That's officially what it is. It's asteroids hitting Earth. That was first round running back.
Mm-hmm.
So are you more worried about Bijan or Breece?
I think I'm more worried about Bijan than I am Breece, but I'm worried about both of these guys, and I know that's a cop-out. But I think, they both are in such similar situations where they're very talented players, very talented prospects. So much of their value is going to come through the air, and so much of their value is going to come on breakaway plays. And we drafted them with the expectation that, hey, imagine how good these guys would be if they got a Christian McCaffrey workload
But let's stop there for a second.
Yeah.
The operative word, imagine. You led off with imagine. These two running backs are projections. Ultimately, when you're drafting them, just acknowledge this is a projection. Just like Garrett Wilson's a projection. Just like Drake London's a projection. Go in with it eyes wide open. Right? Aaron Jones and Alvin Kamara ain't projections.
They've done it. They got a history of doing it. Right. Yeah.
Thank you. But I agree with you. I agree. Breece Hall has shown himself to be more explosive and even better in the passing game than Bijan. And that has to ease your mind in that, okay, there's explosive plays to get there, ways to get there. Breece seems to have more ways to get there week in, week out to get you, say, 17 fantasy points. With Bijan, it's like, thank God he gave me 17 fantasy points.
I think the nice thing with the Jets is that Aaron Rodgers really just wants to hyper-target his running backs. I mean, we've seen that. They're pulling like 40% of the targets are going to the running backs. So I think that you're at least seeing that where Breece Hall and Braylon Allen are both going to get a lot of targets here. But I think one of the biggest whiffs for me is that I wasn't a believer in Braylon Allen. And I know a lot of people were. He broke out as a freshman at Wisconsin, looked fantastic. But what I saw last year was a guy who was shying away from contact, didn't really have the burst that we saw his freshman season. And I was concerned about Braylon Allen, but it took 2 weeks of seeing him on an NFL field to just completely eat my words on that. He slimmed down a little bit. He looks faster. He's breaking tackles. He's not shying away from contact the way that he was at Wisconsin. So if I knew that Braylon Allen was going to look as good as he does, Breece Hall would have been a second or a third round pick for me. But I didn't even think in the preseason that Braylon Allen was going to be a guy that we'd have to worry about cutting into Breece Hall's workload.
Listen, man, don't feel bad. You had no idea that he was just a bigger Bucky Irving.
Great. He's great. Like Braylon Allen is.
Yeah, you had no idea. It's fine.
How did
he ended up being a big Bucky Irving. We didn't know.
Yeah.
We didn't know. I had an idea what Braylon Allen was, but didn't know what Bucky Irving was. So we all have this situation. It can't be right about every rookie. It's crazy. But it's still, it was a problem when they drafted him. It was a problem, and then they also drafted Isaac Davis.
Yeah.
Is that right? From
Isaiah Davis, I think.
Isaiah Davis?
Maybe.
It's either Isaac or Isaiah. It's Isaiah.
Isaiah Davis.
It's Isaiah. It's Isaiah Davis. And why? What? Right? So just draft Amon-Ra St. Brown in the first round. Just do that. Justin Jefferson, they're there. Just draft them. That's the thing to do. It's really boring, and it's like it's you're locking in an incredible target share and an absolute baseline of 18 fantasy points a game from a position that's getting harder and harder to score fantasy points from. So that but we're now a month removed from draft season, so now we can move on. Roschon Johnson scored a touchdown.
I think he's going to continue scoring touchdowns.
Let's talk about this Chicago backfield.
Mm-hmm. Do you want me to just lead off? Is that the intro to it? We can start talking. I mean, I've heard so many people be like, well, DeAndre Swift finally broke out. The Bears aren't playing the Rams every single week. We expected DeAndre Swift to look good in this matchup. I still think Roschon Johnson's the better running back, and I'm not going to let week 4 the production from either of them cloud that judgment. I think Roschon Johnson's the better running back. DeAndre Swift, I've never really been a huge fan. The analytics, the missed tackles and the juke rate and all of those things get people so excited, but that's because he does a lot of east-west dancing. Like, he doesn't know how to get upfield. He runs to the sideline and he breaks 2 tackles on his way to a 1-yard gain. I'm not the biggest DeAndre Swift fan. I think that Roschon Johnson is a more well-rounded running back. And it's tough when you're paying a guy, the type of money that you're paying DeAndre Swift, the front office is going to have their hand in there and want to make sure that they're getting their money's worth. But Roschon Johnson is just a better football player.
We did not plan this show in advance. Again, this is not something. This is real. This was booked months ago. We didn't know. Now, if I was that smart, I would have thought, look at the calendar, week 4, heading into week 5. When do I think Roschon Johnson's going to take over? It sounds about right. So that, if I could have maybe pre-planned that, but...
So I will say Roschon Johnson hasn't totally taken over yet. I wanted to see more. DeAndre Swift did get run in week 4 more than I expected.
He played
the weird
great.
thing was Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert was just pushed out. Not a single touch for Khalil Herbert. Like, it is now, I don't know what the plan is with Khalil Herbert, but Roschon Johnson is getting all the goal line work, which he should, because you saw what DeAndre Swift did at the goal line in week 3. It was horrendous. I think Roschon Johnson is going to... He'll keep getting those looks so we can see touchdowns, but I think we should see even more than that. Like, I want to see Roschon involved in the passing game, which was his calling card in college. I want to see him get involved in between the tackles on early downs, because we know he can do that, and he can push a pile better than DeAndre Swift can. It's frustrating. I have this, we kind of joke on our show all the time that there's this spectrum, and every NFL player falls into the spectrum. And on one end, you've got DeAndre Swift, and on the other end, you've got Devin Singletary. And DeAndre Swift is the guy with the fun efficiency metrics that isn't a good football player and coaches don't like. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you've got Devin Singletary, who doesn't have any of the flashy efficiency metrics, but he does the hard-nosed things that coaches like, and that keeps him on the field, and it keeps him in a role that's relevant for fantasy. And DeAndre Swift is just the guy that I think people get bogged down in the spreadsheets a little bit too much and think that he's a good football player. But this guy ran himself out of a job in Detroit with 2 different coaching staffs. He ran himself out of a job in Philadelphia. He spent 4 years behind some of the best offensive lines in the NFL. And now he's being behind a bad offensive line in Chicago. And all of those warts that I've been able to see through his first 4 years are now very evident when he doesn't have the league's best run blocking in front of him. I just don't think DeAndre Swift is a good running back.
We might have been fooled by this Chicago Bears front office. That Bryce Young trade really wallpapered over some bad decisions that they've made. They've made some great picks. They've made great moves. Like listen, this is at least an average front office. They have rebuilt this team, and it can succeed even with fucking Eberfluss managing it, right? The day-to-day coaching decisions for Eberfluss and just Shane Waldron, just a complete fraud, right? So the fact that they can win games even with this coaching staff is a testament to the roster construction and the build and the talent that they've brought in. Jalen Johnson, they've done great. Right, even the Roschon Johnson draft pick was really savvy. Like there's a lot of great moves, but then they make these picks and they make some of these free agent acquisitions like this DeAndre Swift, where you're like, who's consulting on this? This is wrong. No, he just came from 2 of the great offensive lines in the sport. There's nowhere to go but down for this guy, and you're drafting him, or you're trading for him, or you're signing him. In this case, DeAndre Swift was signed away from the Eagles by going back and look at his college tape and his college profile and some of these efficiency metrics in the context of a great offensive line, which are irrelevant in Chicago. Also, he doesn't like to play football. Mm-hmm. He's one of the worst players you could possibly give the ball to at the goal line because he doesn't want any of that contact. He doesn't want this life, man. As it turns out, Bucky Irving does. Mm-hmm. And good for Bucky Irving. They gave Bucky Irving a goal line carry and he punched it in. Right? Bucky Irving's 195 pounds. DeAndre Swift's 210. But he plays the game like a 190-pound back. That's the problem. He doesn't want to be out there. Roschon Johnson does. And if you're one of these people who loves Bucky Irving, right, and you love what Bucky Irving brings to the table, and you're the first to jump in and criticize Rachaad White, then you need to also be a Roschon Johnson fan. If the things you like about Bucky Irving, that's what Roschon brings to the table, but add 30 pounds. Add an ability to move the pile, not just punch it in. Add even better hands out of the backfield. Roschon Johnson is one of the great talents at the running back position that nobody knows about, but it's only a matter of time because he does not have the explosive breakaway speed. But there is a laundry list of running backs, most notably Arian Foster and many others back through time, that were able to be Pro Bowlers even without great burst. Just wait. Just wait. If he's available, get him. If you think you can trade for him, do it. If you're new to this, it should be easy because your league mates might not see it coming. But many of you, unfortunately, you're in leagues where they are already listening to Dave and myself. And there's already, this is what we've seen, and this is what makes me so happy and proud, is that the feedback I'm getting from people is, yeah, man, I've already asked the Roschon manager, he's not doing it.
Yep.
Right? And I'm like, well, why? And I'm like, well, I accidentally told him about your show and now it's too late. And, and it's like, hey, man, what are you going to do? Like, we're preaching to the people the truth about the NFL. And yeah, there's an incredible utility for a lot of these metrics. But in the context of, and specifically the example of DeAndre Swift, that's where they could be misused.
And I think there's a lot of these situations where we want the young guy who's sparked up with a relative athletic score and all those sorts of things. We want him to take over the backfield. But a lot of times the incumbent is a guy who has history with the team or a guy who is a gritty veteran that knows how to do the things that coaches want.
Motor.
DeAndre doesn't have
motor.
either of those.
Has a
Exactly.
motor. How about motor?
Exactly.
Took me a while, man. I got to admit, took me years
to
come around on Devin Singletary.
And like I said, that's why in this imaginary spectrum that I talk about, like a guy like Devin Singletary, his workload's not going anywhere because he picks up the blitz protections, he runs through defenders' faces, he makes piles move, he does all of those things that coaches really like. You watch Hard Knocks, right? I imagine you do.
Oh,
Matt.
yes.
Did you watch the Hard Knocks, the Detroit Lions 3 years ago?
Yes.
It was DeAndre Swift, his sophomore season. DeAndre Swift had a very promising rookie year. And do you remember the scene where he was getting reamed by Deuce Staley when they were going through film review? And Deuce Staley is like, what are you doing? He's like, you're supposed to drop your pads here and you hit the defender and you're stepping out of bounds. That type of stuff drives NFL coaches nuts, where you're leaving yards on the field because you're shying away from contact. And that's something that DeAndre Swift consistently does. So this isn't an incumbent guy who moves the pile and gets the team rallied behind him. This is a brand new guy that the team signed who isn't doing his job well. He has no sort of insulation protecting his role. It could happen next week. It could happen 4 weeks from now. I don't know if or when it will happen, but like the snap of a finger, Roschon Johnson could take over this backfield.
Yeah, Roschon Johnson, very high dog rating. DeAndre Swift has a negative dog rating. We've never seen it before, but I think DeAndre Swift actually has a negative dog rating. On that Hard Knocks, when they would flash to the sideline and you would see DeAndre Swift, if he wasn't in the game, completely checked out, like hands in his pockets, looking down, like not engaging with his teammates, not caring what was happening on the field, not paying attention, just going through the motions, man. Cashing paychecks. I mean, good for you, man. Good for you. But this is not the type of league, this is not the type of sports league where you could do that for 10 years.
And
right? He's not going to be in the league 5 years from now. There's not going to be a DeAndre Swift. He's going to be 28 years old, and he's going to be looking for a different profession.
And again, I'll go back to Hard Knocks here. Ian Thomas, remember the undrafted kid that was in med school that was trying to make the team as the Bears running back? Did you see the coaches were saying the same thing to him, where they were saying like, drop your pads and hit a player, and they kept telling him to do that. And when he finally did, it was in practice, dropped his pads, ran through a defender. The sideline erupts. The coaches are going ballistic. Like, that's what people want to see on a football field. And I think DeAndre Swift, when he is out there trying to just outrun everybody and then sidestepping out of bounds when he doesn't find the lane that he wants, that just kills the momentum for everybody else on the team. And then when you juxtapose that to a guy like Roschon Johnson, who is going to do everything he can to seek out contact and just punish the other team for even thinking about tackling him, that trickles down to everybody else on the offense, and it just makes the whole team better. I think DeAndre Swift is just a liability when he's out there right now.
And I could see what was happening with the Bears, where they're like, okay, Khalil Herbert is too good, and he's too established to release in final cuts. But we really want to keep this Velus Jones, because Velus Jones just show us real explosiveness. He's a special teams utility. We just gave DeAndre Swift all this money. Most teams are only going to keep 3 running backs. We've converted Velus Jones to running back. It's a bit of a nit move to keep 4 running backs on an active roster. Mm-hmm. But somebody spoke up and said, no, you're not. You can't let go of Roschon. There's no fucking way. There's absolutely no. He is a professional running back. That's not happening. So thankfully, Ryan Poles got the message that this is not a guy that's on the roster bubble, and maybe he's inactive in week 1, which was super depressing for me. But it's only a matter of time for a guy like that. And they did right by Khalil Herbert too. They gave him touches early, right? Week 1, week 2, gave him some touches, maintained his value in the marketplace, maintained his trade value. So you could argue that this has been in the face of a bad signing, that they've managed through this the best they can, and that now they can trade Herbert. Like, they should have traded him already. Why Devontae Adams is a Raider? I don't know, Dave. Why Herbert is a Bear? I don't know. Explain this to me.
I mean, there's a lot of incompetency in NFL front offices, and we see this multi-billion-dollar organizations, and we assume that they're going to do things the right way, but time and time again, I'm going to go back to Hard Knocks. I'm sorry to keep talking about Hard Knocks, but the Hard Knocks, the Giants, the offseason thing that they did this year, that was the new version of Hard Knocks, I couldn't believe it. I was like, these guys don't know what they're talking about. I was blown away at how incompetent the New York Giants front office was. Like, some of the things that they were saying. I think the one scene that really just summed up how incompetent they were was when Joe Shane was talking to Frank Gore. Mind you, Frank Gore, that played into his 40s, one of the best running backs of all time, saying, well, running backs just fall off the age cliff at 27. No discussion about usage or talent level or draft production or anything like that. Just saying, running backs fall off the age cliff at age 27. To Frank freaking Gore, the guy who had 5 Pro Bowls beyond the age of 27 years old. I just don't think that the front offices know what they're doing, and we give them the benefit of the doubt way too often. So asking why Devontae Adams is a Raider, why Khalil Herbert is a Chicago Bear, I think we just chalk that up as NFL front offices do stupid things all the time.
When the Giants were evaluating Marvin Harrison versus Malik Nabers versus Rome Odunze, the data-free way that they were stack ranking these guys, shocked me. My daughter looked over at me and she's like, in my mouth, I was like, wait, they're just gonna, they don't have any underlying reasoning why they prefer Marvin Harrison to Malik Nabers. They would have drafted Marvin Harrison over Malik Nabers. Marvin Harrison's doing great. Okay, he's doing great.
Joe Shane strikes me as a guy that got a book on how to use analytics in football. and he read the first chapter and said, "All right, well, that's enough for me. Let's go out there and manage the New York Giants."
I was like, this happens, but like, not a single stat, not anything, not an underlying reason for anything. You don't have to give me a stat. You can just talk about play style. You can talk about something. Nothing. No, it was painful. I have 10 burning questions for you. 10 burning questions for Dave Kluge. Coming up, and I am looking for where the read is. So I'm supposed to do a read. Oh, this is awkward. Oh, this has been everyone has been, I think most have been treated to smooth transitions from me for a while. So I got a hang of it for a while. And now I went to go pick the promotional read that I was going to do, and then it wasn't there. And so now I'm struggling, and I'm stammering, and I'm stuttering, and I'm trying to get through it. And now we're going to hear about the player profiler player rankings. Hey, this will just take a second. I want to talk about our player rankings, the weekly rankings, the weekly projections. Billy, Theo, and our analytics geniuses getting your start sit decisions dialed in that flex tab. And then you get the season rankings. Want to make add drop decisions? The season rankings are updated every week all year. And you have the best dynasty rankings ever as part of the player rankings package. And don't forget the offensive line rankings. Dan Fornick, one of the best in the business. New running back starting this week. Hey, is that offensive line top 10? Yeah, okay, start them. And we rank the cornerbacks out to like CB100 with the corresponding receiver they're going to be matched up with most this coming week. The player rankings are the thing you need during the season on playerprofiler.com. Check it out. Ooh, tight. And we're going to do a tight 10 questions, burning questions for Dave Kluge. Is Caleb Williams overrated?
No, not at all. I think expectations are so high.
It's impossible.
I'm trying to shelf my emotion as much as possible here. Expectations for rookie quarterbacks get skewed by the outliers. And we saw CJ Stroud last year. We see Jaden Daniels this year. So now anybody who isn't immediately as good as CJ Stroud or Jaden Daniels is just going to be considered a bust. And I don't see it that way. I think with Caleb Williams, I was on record saying that they should have benched him year one. I would have liked to see a veteran or even Tyson Bagent, who is a pretty good quarterback, have him start a little bit and kind of let Caleb soak it in from the sideline, a recipe that has proven to be successful for many quarterbacks. But I was looking at this yesterday, and I actually just wrote about Caleb Williams in my 3 up, 3 down article this morning, and I had Caleb Williams as trending up because I think a lot of people are starting to say, the production hasn't been there. But he has shown steady improvements in every single game, and the numbers show that. Completion percentage over expectation has gone up in 4 straight games. Completion percentage just in general has gone up in 4 straight games. His PFF grade has gone up in 4 straight games. His touchdown rate has gone up in 4 straight games. And a lot of the issues that you see him make in a game are out of his game in the next week. Week 1, we saw him try to do something that he did often at USC, where he tried to run out the back of the pocket and extend the play. And what happened? He got chased down because this is the NFL, and he took a 20-yard sack. So then in week 2, we don't see him running out the back of the pocket. We see him stepping up in the face of pressure as an NFL quarterback should. The issue he had in week 2, he short-armed a lot of his deep passes, and they got intercepted. So what did we see in week 3? He sailed every deep pass. Still not good, but at least he's not turning the ball over. So I'm seeing steady progression every single week. The Bears absolutely built a 5-year plan around Caleb Williams. DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Cole Kmet, they're all under contract through the entirety of Caleb Williams' career. Through the entirety of his rookie contract. So year 1, I think you just want to see improvements because he is a toolsy player with a ton of upside, and we want to see him, tap into that upside. My expectations for year 1 are pretty low. I want to see continued improvement, and I'm seeing that. So consider my expectations, even though they were a little bit low, have been fulfilled so far.
He's a good player. There's nothing to worry about. He's a rookie. Relax. Yeah. It's partly all the weapons that he was bequeathed raised the expectations. It's going to happen. The guy has natural ability. The guy wants to focus on the sport of football and is, blocking out the distractions. This was one of the great benefits of having Hard Knocks was there were a lot of questions about Caleb Williams. And, would he exhibit any diva behavior? No. Actually, it was one of those things where it's like he was teaching the coaches at times because his coaches are below average. And that was really cool. And I walked away from Hard Knocks, much more confident in his ability. And yeah, he's already been put in situations where you have to go put up 300 plus yards in comeback mode. Sure, throwing some picks, but he's already putting the team on his back in hero mode here and there. And now you have a healthy Keenan Allen. This is an exciting time to get behind Caleb Williams. He's an interesting guy to trade for in single quarterback leagues right now. Mm-hmm. Now is the window. The buy window for Caleb Williams is here in single quarterback leagues, and it's probably going to shut very quickly. Where does Tyson Bagent rank in the NFL among quarterbacks?
Top 40, at least.
He is a top 8 backup quarterback.
Top 8 backup quarterback? Well, maybe even higher than top 40 because I think that there are some starting quarterbacks right now who are probably out of the top 32. I think Bagent's probably in the 35 to 40 range. And
top
it
35.
Is, yeah.
Top 35.
Top 35. Top 40. He's in there. I mean, he's darn good.
What
and
you
look
do,
what he did last year.
NFL general managers, this is what I would do if I were you. Start a conversation now with the Bears about Bagent. Start a relationship with Ryan Poles that can eventually lead to Tyson Bagent. It is the long game. Play the long game. You're not going to get him now, but you play the long game and eventually figure out a way to get your hands on Bagent, because that would be, if you could get Bagent, he's one of the best value assets. Think about how valuable a quarterback is when they talk about the contract of an undrafted quarterback, right? And on Hard Knocks, they go up in front of everybody and then they actually recite their contract. It was the signing bonus.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just embarrassing. And Tyson Bagent's like, wait, I'm way better than this guy's, but here was my signing bonus. It's like, yes. Yeah, this is how you extract value. It's not always easy. Sometimes you just pick up the phone and you flip a pick and it's that easy. Or sometimes you just answer a phone call and it's the Panthers. Right? And they want to send you everything they have. And you're like, and DJ Moore. And you're like, okay. Yeah. It's very simple. Yeah, other times it's a challenge, and that's what you have to do as an NFL general manager is constantly be identifying, okay, who is underrated based on their contract value, where they were drafted, and who's accessible to me. Who can I actually acquire? Who's potentially available? Can we create an availability window for this player? And with Bagent, that's what I would be looking to do. Essentially, if I had anyone other than a young, fully established C.J. Stroud level quarterback, almost any other situation, I'm like, I gotta see if I can, sneak Bagent by the goalie. That's what I would be doing.
I don't think the Bears are going to let him go. I think the Bears realize the value that they have in Bagent and how important having a backup quarterback is. But I was looking at this morning.
No, Dave. You forget. Here's what you forget. Day 2 of the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
These GMs get very, very thirsty.
Mm-hmm.
And that is when you strike. They want a guy. They get locked in on a guy, and they know they're not going to get that guy. And that's when you make the phone call.
That's a good point, and we see that every year where teams do make silly trades on day 2 and day 3. But again, I looked it up this morning. Tyson Bagent had 4 starts last year, if you recall, when Justin Fields was injured. In those 4 games, he had the same amount of passing yards Caleb Williams has had through his first 4 starts. Mind you, this is an undrafted rookie getting 4 starts unexpectedly in the middle of the season. Just as many passing yards as Caleb Williams, higher completion percentage, just as many touchdowns, fewer interceptions, higher QBR. I mean, there's a strong argument that Tyson Bagent's 4 starts last year are better than the 4 starts we've seen from Caleb Williams thus far. Yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I mean, there's of course the ceiling for Caleb Williams is higher. If it all pans out for Caleb Williams.
But man, what's the ceiling for Bagent? Jordan Love?
I could see that. Like, put him in a good situation. Let's say right now, I mean, we got the word this morning that Tua Tagovailoa is probably coming back after his stint from IR. But like, you're telling me that if you put Tyson Bagent in this Miami offense, if they weren't expecting Tua to come back, Tyson Bagent would probably be a top 10 fantasy quarterback if he played the rest of the season in Miami.
He's mobile.
He's mobile.
Oh, yeah.
He's got a big arm. He's accurate. I mean, he drops passes 30 yards downfield in a bucket. And he just makes it look easy. Tyson Bagent is a good quarterback. And I don't want this, I'm sure people watching this see the Bears helmet back here, and we've talked about me being a Bears fan. I am the most pessimistic Bears fan on the planet. Like, I'm not a guy who looks at this team through rose-colored glasses and says everybody is good. I have been kicked in the teeth for 3 decades by this organization, and I don't want to say good things about them. I always keep my guard up so I can't get hurt. But Tyson Bagent is a hell of a football player.
It was amazing. At the Senior Bowl, there was a quarterback injury, and he was their backup, and he wasn't committed to going to the Shrine Bowls. He was the best they could find to come in from Shepherd College to fill in drills. Mm-hmm. And I remember day 2 of practice at the Senior Bowl, and we were all looking at each other going, oh my God, that's the best quarterback out there easily.
Yep.
He's the one. Look, finally, we get to see what Jaden Reed is, right? We get to finally see what Michael Wilson can be, Rashi Rice, right? It was Tyson Bagent was immediately the best quarterback on the field. And he was an emergency, throw him in there to just run drills. And it was like, oh, no. Where the fuck did you find this guy? He's incredible.
And then he still went on.
It was just a very cool, it's an amazing story. I love him. Yeah.
Laughing at all the comments right now. It's just like, why the hell are you guys talking about Tyson Bagent? Because I think we went on for about,
because we're an hour and a half in. Where no other shows go past an hour and a half in season. No one does that. It's not something that's happening. It's not something you see in podcasting. It's not something you see on YouTube. It's not something you see anywhere. After the first hour and a half, we give you the first hour and a half. That's what you pay for. We're like Ray Lewis. You pay me for practice. Okay? You pay me to talk to the media. I give you Sundays for free. Okay? You pay me nothing already to watch this show. Okay? But still, my obligation is to give you a good hour and a half, right? The rest of the show I do for me. And I want to talk about Tyson Bagent with my friend who's also a Bears fan, Dave Kluge. And if you don't like it, you can shove it. But by all means, please continue to comment because that helps us with the algorithm.
And 6 years from now, when Tyson Bagent is the starter for the Seattle Seahawks, we can go back to this and say, hey, remember in 2024 when we had this talk about Tyson Bagent? So this is for us, so we can come back and talk about this conversation 5-6 years from now when Bagent finally pans out.
Oh yeah, we have to have this in the time capsule. Absolutely. Yeah. The reason we're here is for the told you so's and the victory laps. There's no other reason, right? It's like with Jaden Reed. Jaden Reed gets Jordan Love back, and it goes off. One of the easier lock button players. Like, oh, is he getting Jordan? Okay, he's getting Jordan Love back. I mean, the wide receiver position is very difficult to project week to week. But last week, and again, all these guys had similar ADPs. That was the weird thing. I just thought it was very odd. I was like, I've got 5 guys all with similar ADPs that I have lock buttons for, and that never happens. Usually I'm like struggling to find one guy, and I'm like, Pickens, ding, Jaden Reed, ding, and it's like all the most obvious process plays, right? Terry McLaurin, ding, Deontay Johnson, ding, 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 ding. Now we see Dontavian Wicks. Would you go as far as starting Wicks if you picked him up?
This week, absolutely, yeah. I think the thing with Wicks
they're playing
was always
the Rams. I mean, if you're going to pick him up, if you don't start him this week, then what the fuck are you doing?
And, I went back and I rewatched that game yesterday. Dontavian Wicks left so much meat on the bone. And it wasn't even Jordan Love left the meat on the bone. There were multiple plays where there was one where Dontavian Wicks was wide open, screaming down the sideline, had 10 yards of separation, and Jordan Love short-armed it and ended up getting broken up. There was another one where Dontavian Wicks cut across the middle of the field on a deep post route. He was 25 yards downfield. Jordan Love skipped it into him. I mean, we were this close to having like a 35-point Dontavian Wicks game. 13 targets, completely took over. Now this
who else was at that Tyson Bagent Senior Bowl?
Jaden Reed,
Dontavian Wicks,
the guy that. Oh, Dontavian Wicks, yeah.
You know who else was there?
Who else?
Puka Nacua.
Yeah.
You know who else was there? Roshan Johnson.
Jaden Reed wasn't there, was he?
He was. He was awesome.
All right, he was. Yeah,
he was awesome. I remember him because he was wearing the armbands around the biceps, and that's how you knew he was good right away.
Yeah, that's a good look. Really makes him pop, especially when they're stretched really thin. Then you got something going.
They were super thin. He looked great, and he was making great plays. We all were thinking it. We're like, this is the worst crop of quarterbacks combined with the best crop of receivers. What's gonna happen? And then in steps Bagent, and it's like, oh.
with Jaden Reed, are you nervous a little bit? I mean, this kind of feels like a house of cards, right? Or am I crazy?
This is your Bear fandom taking over now?
No. I'm like, no, not at all. This offseason, I was very bullish on the Packers. But what we've seen, I mean, they have to operate out of 11 personnel for Jaden Reed to get on the field. He still isn't on the field for 2 wide receiver sets. Like this week,
that's just because of the way coaches are with players like Romeo Dobbs. We've talked about this. He's Stephon Diggs. If at any point they want to put him into receiver sets, they can, and he'll be fine.
See, that's where I'd push back a little bit. I don't think he can beat corners and press coverage on the outside. We haven't seen that yet. So the difference is that they switched their base personnel. Last year, they were operating out of 12 personnel. Now they're operating out of 11 personnel. So that's the difference. Last year, Jaden Reed was on the field for 40% of the snaps. Now he's on the field for 75% of the snaps because they've changed their base personnel package. So you can still see it, but the targets, it's just been wildly efficient right now. And I love Jaden Reed. He is a very good football player. I'm not trying to take away from him, but I think if, we're talking about actual advice,
a sophomore receiver. He's played 20 games in his NFL career. We're not at that point where you can say he's not a target earner enough. And, we're riding a bit too much efficiency at this point. He's at a place in his career where you're okay, Dave, just celebrating the efficiency and the fantasy points and not overthinking this one.
You're probably right. But let me throw some names out there. Like if you could flip him for a Deontay Johnson or a Chris Godwin, would you prefer the veterans there? Or do you think Jaden Reed is still a guy that you prefer over Johnson and Godwin? Because I'm looking at rest of season rankings. And
please do not tell people that subscribe to Football Guys. They pay good money for Football Guys. You cannot tell them to trade Jaden Reed for Chris Godwin or Deontay Johnson, especially in Dynasty.
Oh, not in Dynasty. No, absolutely not. But I'm saying...
But for this year... Okay, well, they had similar ADPs, and they've all been similarly productive. So that's not really a stretch. I thought you were coming in with some kind of hot Dynasty take.
No.
But
this year,
apologies to everybody involved here. I did not realize that this was a redraft conversation. In which case, it's all pretty. It's all kind of a wash, right? I mean, you have one of the most established target earners in the league over the last 5 years in Chris Godwin. You have the best or one of the best separators in Deontay Johnson, and you have one of the best big play artists in Jaden Reed. They were all 4th, 5th, 6th round picks. They've all been delivering ahead of expectations, especially if you started players based on who their quarterback is and didn't accidentally start Jaden Reed in week 3, then you're feeling great. This week he's playing the Rams. Right. You would never bench him. And so you can't flip a Jaden Reed heading into a game against the Rams, and then they play the Packers. The schedule is just too good. The schedule is too good, and we're here to win. We know what we're getting with a Chris Godwin and a Deontay Johnson. The upside with Reed is a little bit higher, especially now that there is this open-ended target distribution and target share, which is not yet locked. We know what the target share is going to be with Deontay Johnson. We know what the target share is going to be with Chris Godwin. There's still more upside to go with Jaden Reed because we haven't seen the week 5 game plan yet, where we know Christian Watson's unavailable. What's the game plan going to be?
Good point.
So there's a lot of cards that can come on the river that can help Jaden Reed still. And then the bonus is it's easy because we already have a made hand and that we're playing the Rams anyway.
It's a good point.
So why the fuck would you trade that situation? You wouldn't you decide to do let's redeal.
Listen,
right? That's all you're at. You're just doing a redeal if you go back to Chris Godwin or Deontay Johnson. You hit your flush, dude. Enjoy it. Take the money.
Like I said,
take all the money, dude.
It feels a little fraudulent right now because the snap share hasn't been there, the route participation hasn't been there, and both of his big games have come with Jordan Love in losses where Jordan Love has been forced to just air it out like crazy, and it opens up these big plays for Jaden Reed. I mean, what happens if they do come out in week 5 and they say we're just going to beat the Rams on the ground and it's a Josh Jacobs, Emmanuel Wilson type of week, and Jaden Reed doesn't have that big blow-up game with Jordan Love? Then all of a sudden his value starts to tailspin a little bit because people get worried that they overreacted to 2 games with Love. I think I'd take the safer options in guys like Godwin and Deontay Johnson, like I mentioned. I don't know.
You
I
like
might
finishing
be big
in second in fantasy football, I guess.
Yeah.
You like finishing second. Here's where I think there's value to be extracted. Is a lot of us drafted very heavily at the wide receiver position. So we have a lot of great options. We have both Deontay Johnson and Jaden Reed. I'm sure there's some rosters out there. Raise your hand in the chat. You could have Godwin, Johnson, and Reed. That's a plausible roster construction, given that we were ahead of consensus on those 3 players. Therefore, if you could find someone who's willing to say sell high on a Brian Robinson and sees the schedule, and you can put it in the chat, in your league chat, talk about the schedule, talk about the upside. You believe that Jaden Reed has top 5 wide receiver in fantasy upside, and you're just chit-chatting with your league mates. If you can get a deal done for a running back, then you're not making some kind of lateral move where you're losing upside. Now we can have a conversation. I think you got to somehow get leverage in the deal, and the way to get leverage would be to get either a running back or a tight end. The problem is I can't think of one tight end I would even want. I mean, maybe Kittle.
Yeah. I'd prefer Reed to Kittle. Yeah.
Right. I
mean
mean
you're getting some extra another position of need, maybe.
Is there? But I mean, Goddard's been the best tight end recently, but they're gonna get their weapons back.
Yeah.
Laporta, no.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I mean,
Bowers coming off a quiet week. I don't know if I'd want to make that trade either. Yeah.
I mean, Bowers, no. Right? If there was some tight end that we could get excited about, we had some lead on a tight end, but there isn't one. I'm trying to. Bowers might be the one where that might be an exciting, just fuck it, right?
Yeah. I mean,
if I was getting no production at tight end and I had this,
I've got a super deep wide receiver
glut of wide receiver production. That you see, I am a bit of a gambler. That's a lever I might consider. If we were actually doing real trades in real leagues, That's a lever I would consider. I would be trying to work
Maybe.
the phones, just like I would be working Ryan Poles. I would be working the Brian Robinson guy to try to see if he can sell high, right? Because I don't think you're going to get anyone to sell high on Kamara. You're not going to get anyone to sell high on Walker. You're not going to get anyone to sell high on Aaron Jones. But there's still enough, I think, dubiousness surrounding Brian Robinson that you may be able to get someone that drafted him just because he was there and they needed a running back, and they're happy to cash in right now.
And Brock Bowers, this might be the last opportunity to buy low. In a game with no Devontae Adams, he had a down week. Now trade rumors are starting to swirl about Devontae Adams again. I don't know.
Oh my God,
we've been on this
imagine
show
that.
for the last couple of hours. Yeah, like Devontae Adams is out of the picture. Brock Bowers is probably a top 20 asset for the rest of the season.
I love this. In fact, and this is the final half hour of the show where we can do whatever we want, and yet it's also somehow the best fucking content you could ever imagine. Because we have a debate where we strongly disagree about Jayden Reed. Next thing you know, we come up with a unified,
actionable
game plan to trade Jayden Reed and profit by going out and getting Brock Bowers. And we both sign off on it. We have to both. This is like the nuclear codes. You have to sign and I have to sign. Okay? You hate Jayden Reed. I love Jayden Reed. We both sign it off and we hand in the slip. You don't hate Jayden Reed. I know that.
Let the record show.
I know. I just want to make sure people know. You don't hate Jayden Reed.
I feel like he's going to be a very good wide receiver 2, and if you can cash in for wide receiver 1 prices right now, I think it's worth entertaining.
I understand what you're saying. And I'm almost, if you have fantasy production that is outpacing your target share, which is what you're saying, then from a systematic standpoint, that's almost always a good decision.
He's averaging 30 points per game with Jordan Love on 7 targets. I mean, it's great. Don't get me wrong. I
would also post that stat in the chat before trade talks. So, here's the other side of that is you have a guy that's doing it with touchdowns and without the targets, but who we also know is no good, like a Quentin Johnston.
Oh,
right? Like, there were people starting Quentin Johnston last week thinking like this is just what happens. Like, he just scores lots of touchdowns on almost no targets. You didn't start Quentin Johnston last week.
No, but I did recommend Quentin Johnston prior to week 1. I said, pick this guy up as your pre-week 1 waiver claims, and we'll find out quickly whether he took that step forward or not. And a lot of people said, well, he took the step forward. He's scoring touchdowns. Those were coming on broken. He had one nice touchdown. I will give it to him. There was one where he was covered and somehow was able to poke his hands out there and catch the ball. The other touchdown came on a broken play. But I went back and I watched week 4's game. Dude, they put a clamp on him. Like, it's like the cornerback just super glued his hip to Quentin Johnston's. He could not get open. And I think what we saw early is like, hey, we need to make this happen. Like, this is a former first-round pick. We got a new organization here. Like, let's force him some touches. They forced him the touches, but he's just not it, man. I am so out on Quentin Johnston. Rarely am I willing to give up after, like, just a game or a season and 4 games. But, like, if I'm in Dynasty, I don't have any Quentin Johnston shares left. I don't even know what the low, like, are we at the point where we're just taking a 3rd-round pick for Quentin Johnston, just cutting bait and saying, I don't even want this guy on my team anymore? Because that's kind of where I'd be.
We buy high and sell low a lot more than others on this program.
There's nothing wrong with it. Better than just holding on to somebody that's going to be worthless in half a season, which Quentin Johnston could be.
Buy high on Justin Fields?
Yeah.
It's interesting as a Bears fan where you see the future and Caleb's going to be great. He's going to be just fine. But also seeing Justin Fields play well, it's kind of interesting, like, warm, fuzzy feeling.
So again, like, I'm a Bears fan, but I'm not like painting my face navy and orange on Sunday mornings and going crazy. Like, I think I'm a pretty level-headed fan, and I'm a Justin Fields fan. too. Like, I'm not just a Bears
Mm-hmm.
fan. I'm a big fan of Justin Fields. Loved him in college. I was ecstatic when the Bears traded up for Justin Fields because I like the Bears and I love Justin Fields. And it was just, I was so happy that we were able to get Justin Fields on the Bears and want nothing but success for him. And I think that what they're doing right now is kind of breaking him down and building him from the ground up. And that's kind of what they had to do because his development in Chicago never went as planned. If you remember, they had Andy Dalton, Justin Fields' rookie season, and Justin Fields was supposed to sit. Like, the preseason conversation about Justin Fields was, when is he going to start? And a lot of people were eyeballing week 8, week 9, week 10, and then Andy Dalton blows his ankle out in week 2, and Justin Fields is thrusted into a game that he wasn't ready for. And we just saw the development just unravel with each passing week. And then we see what they're doing here in Pittsburgh, and they're building a game plan around Justin Fields. I mean, week 1, we saw him like he wasn't throwing across the middle of the field at all. Like, he was just hitting outside the numbers. There was one play specifically last week that really, really stuck out to me that kind of showed the maturation of Justin Fields, that he is a better quarterback now than he ever was in Chicago. And it was a play where Justin Fields broke out of a messy pocket and he was running, and he could have easily picked up 5 or 6 yards on the ground. And instead of doing that, he stopped at the line of scrimmage and threw the ball to an open Cordell Patterson, who was able to make one defender miss, pick up 10 yards and the first down. And that's just something you never saw from Justin Fields early in his career. When he was dead set on running the ball, there was nothing you could do to stop him from running the ball. And this was a play where he had the rushing lane available and he could have picked up a few yards, and he still kept his eyes downfield enough to find an open Cordell Patterson for a bigger play than he would have been able to get with his legs. Now they're letting him throw across the middle of the field. He's still getting some designed rushes here and there. I think the ceiling for Justin Fields in this Pittsburgh offense, with the pieces he has around him, the creative play calling, I've got him as a top 10 quarterback for the rest of the season in fantasy. Whether he's going to be a very good real life quarterback is a different discussion, but in fantasy, the points are going to keep coming.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Here we go. We got to get into rapid fire.
All right.
Quick. Stream Deshaun Watson this week?
Yes. Not nearly as bad as the numbers make it sound. Had a 82-yard touchdown called back on a holding call, had a beautiful throw that he hit Amari Cooper in the hands with that got tipped up into an interception. I don't think he is nearly as bad as people are making him out to be.
Stream Deshaun Watson. Let's go. You ready for Drake May season?
I don't think it's there yet. I think we still have some time. I think no. And the only reason is because the Patriots, I don't think they have any expectations of doing anything this year. There's no benefit to putting Drake May in there.
It's all true. It's all true. As a Patriots fan, I don't want to see him. As a fantasy fan, I do. I'm trying to call the week that they start playing him and then make sure I have Jalen Polk on the roster.
Yeah.
But it's tough. It's tough. Yeah, I agree with you. You should not rush. It's better for his development if he can just continue to watch.
Exactly.
How do you feel about Marvin Harrison and his TD rate?
That's what good players do. Good players score touchdowns. He's going to keep scoring touchdowns. I think he's still averaging like 7 targets per game. The usage has been there. It's been exciting. He's not going to keep scoring a touchdown every single week, but he's a good football player. Good football players score touchdowns. I'm not concerned that it'll come back down to earth, but I think that as his touchdown rate comes back down to earth, his usage is just going to grow.
Starting a franchise today, are you drafting Marvin Harrison or Rome Odunze?
Marvin Harrison. Yeah. They're both good, but we've...
You're very happy. As a Bears fan, you're happy that I'm giving you a wrong answer on that.
I am. Don't get me wrong. I love Rome Odunze. I just think that Marvin Harrison is the better prospect and better production through the first month of their rookie seasons.
Agree to disagree. Who is the receiver you would prefer? Pick one. Brian Thomas or Ladd McConkey?
Ladd McConkey, definitely. This one's not even close for me.
Not even close.
Not even close.
Well, their production this year has been similar. In fact, I think Brian Thomas has slightly outproduced him.
He is, because he's on a team that throws more, and he has I was looking at this yesterday. Chargers are 30th in pace of play and 28th in pass rate. But what Ladd McConkey is doing, 27% target share. That's 11th best among all receivers, not just rookies. He's pulling a 27% target share.
Yes.
Then I found this number on a player profiler. I actually want you to expand on this a little bit. Average cushion. Do you guys get that from a data provider, or is that something you guys chart yourself?
Yeah, we chart that, yeah.
Konke is number one in average cushion among all receivers. And I don't know exactly what that means, but it corroborates my opinion.
That's probably an outlier. That's probably a small sample situation because he does play in the slot some. And typically the cushion yards are more on the perimeter. But if it's funny, there's some correlation between target separation and cushion, because if a cornerback knows that Quentin Johnston can't separate, they'll also crowd him at the line of scrimmage.
Right.
So Deontay Johnson, he'll actually command a little more cushion because he also is a separator.
Oh, is that cushion? So is that before the snap?
Yeah, it's before the snap.
Oh, gotcha. All right.
Yeah, it's pre-snap cushion.
Gotcha.
Yep, that's what that is. I'm glad you asked that question. Now the whole audience knows the answer to that.
Cool.
We're looking at a possible missed game from Taysom Hill. Chris Olave did leave the game and come back with an aggravation to the hamstring injury that was underreported on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
Would you stream Juwan Johnson?
No, I wouldn't. I like Juwan Johnson. He's a good football player, but it's not like he's playing anywhere near the same role that Taysom Hill has. Taysom Hill's value doesn't come from playing a tight end role in the Saints offense. His value comes from being their goal line back. And Juwan Johnson's going to be third on the pecking order behind Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed. If Chris Olave is out, if he doesn't play this weekend, Juwan Johnson will probably fit inside my top 12. But if Juwan Johnson is playing with Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed, he's not going to my lineup.
Let's wrap this sucker up, baby.
Let's do it.
Bold prediction for 2024 from one Dave Kluge.
We will not see Christian McCaffrey take a snap this year.
Oh. From the Podfather to you, I deeply appreciate you tuning in. And many ask, what can I do? What can I do to help support the hosts, the research they do, the production costs? Go to playerprofiler.com, Dynasty Deluxe, World Famous Draft Kit, Rankings, DFS Dominator, and of course, data analysis. Subscribe to any one of those, and you support all of us and take Player Profiler to the moon.